10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Game over.
Okay. Thanks for the stream comments telling me that I was muted. So I now have to repeat the joke that I just made, unfortunately. So you are expecting to jump in and see the Game Over Montreal stream, but unfortunately, this stream is only for teams that lose. So it's now Game Over Toronto. No, we're going to talk about the Montreal Canadiens. Montreal Canadiens win their first game of the season, and I'm joined here by Arun to the power of 2, Arun Singh from Skybound, and Arun Srinivasan from Yahoo Sports. Welcome him in. How's it going, boys?
Good. I can't wait for the utter confusion of who you're talking to in the stream.
Yes, it's gonna be an interesting one. It's gonna be a little bit chaotic. I'll try to throw it to you guys in a way that makes sense, but we've got a lot of Southeast Asian flair on the show today, and I'm excited for it. I think this is gonna be great, and I think it's gonna be tough for Arun without an E because his Maple Leafs have had a tough time, and I think we're both gonna bully him a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers they scored a touchdown today. They did great.
Yeah, it's all bad here in Toronto, but all you can do is laugh. So we're gonna have a great show tonight. 7-1. Wow, just gotta love it. But anyway, that's wrong show, wrong time. Hey, good for Montreal for getting the first win of the year. Honestly, they totally took control of the game after like the 14-minute mark. So of the first period.
Yeah, it was an interesting start because it started much like the last 5 games, right? Where the Canadiens just didn't look in it, and they took that really dumb penalty from Ben Chiarot, which has been happening essentially every single game, immediately allowed the goal to Dylan Larkin, and you're like, okay, here it goes again. It's the same story over and over and over again. But they actually dug themselves out of it, and I think that you have to give them a little bit of credit that they, for once, didn't get down on themselves. They got back in it right away, and then the power play struck with Hoffman as well. It was a fun game. I have to give the Canadiens credit for it. They found a way to battle back in it, and I think that if you look at this game in comparison to all the other games so far this season, a lot of those 50-50 plays where you're just battling for a puck and you're trying to just get the edge on your opponent, where they were losing them constantly the first 5 games of the season. This game, they started to win them after that first goal. After that beautiful pass by Jonathan Drouin to set up Ben Chiarot. Ironically, it was Chiarot that came back and undid his own mistake with the help of Drouin. But those 50-50 plays, the Canadiens started to control them. And that was essentially the difference, right? You started to see Detroit take some penalties as they got behind from little chip plays. It was a fun game, as much as it was defense optional.
I think this is a game that if you wanted to have a platonic ideal of why people would want to cheer for this group of players on the ice, this team of Montreal Canadiens, this is the exact game why. It's not a bunch of flashy superstars. It's guys who work hard, grind, get the dirty goals that they have to, the lucky bounces, but work hard and just make things happen, which has not been their identity for this season, but felt like their identity in the playoffs. Carey Price and Weber, of course, being the superstars. And it was a fascinating game. We were chatting during the game, and I haven't seen much of Larkin because I don't get to watch many Wings games, but I was just blown away by how good he was, how fun the Wings were. And they collapsed they collapsed so quickly. I thought they were the Maple Leafs. It was brutal. And look, hey, anybody who has a hard time with this, I'm from Toronto, from the GTA. I actually have nothing but love for the Leafs. But it is, It reverse of what I normally expect. I expect the Canadiens to take an early lead, to look good, and then by the second period, give up a heartbreaking goal in the last 5 minutes, and then the third period just piss it away. And I felt good at the end of this game. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it was a weird one, especially when the way that the game went down. I mean, it wasn't all them, but it was like the Montreal Jets really were kind of the keys to the game, right? Mathieu Perreault, phenomenal game. Sami Niku really came in, and that was probably the best game he's played in the NHL, because I watched him a lot when he was with Winnipeg, and because I was covering the Jets back then for the Winnipeg Free Press, and he really has struggled in the NHL so far. I know some people have messaged me saying that he just didn't fit into the Jets system and he might fit better into the Canadian system. That might be true, but it could also be that he's just ready now, or he had a really good game, but he needed that. And if the Canadiens have actually found something in Sami Niku, which is probably unlikely but could be, that's a nice little bit of found money.
Yeah, absolutely. I know in the last few shows you even talk, especially the last one, I think y'all talked about, Bergevin's track record with his pickups, and if it's good or if it's bad, I think it's eye of the beholder. But this game, I don't want to overstate what it means, but it gave me some hope that this is a team that could make the playoffs, that could, when they get it together, aren't going to let themselves fall into the trap, falling into a hole and then gripping their sticks too tightly, which is what it felt like the Wings did. I was watching that power play when it was 3-1, and it just felt like classic Kirk Muller power play. A lot of passing. You don't get points for style. This isn't a Tony Hawk game, and the credit to the Habs for doing their thing. But if you don't shoot, you can't score. And it was absolutely wild to see not the Canadiens doing that for once. They were absolutely dominant once the second period started.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should give a little shout out here that we can get some F's in the chat for my good friend Maria Doty, who saw her Red Wings for the first time in 2 years today. Her favorite team, she's in love with them, and she thought that for sure, they beat the Canadiens because the Red Wings have owned the Canadiens for the last couple of years, and they got rocked. So F's in the chat for Maria. Love you, but unfortunate result for you. But yeah, okay, so getting back to the game, you mentioned earlier, Arun Singh, that the Canadiens, you expect them to kind of piss the game away, letting a back-breaking goal. We got to give some credit to Jake Allen.
Yes.
Like, what a performance. I don't remember if it was 1-1 or 2-1, but in the first period, he made an absolutely incredible save when the Red Wings started to push back a little bit that I think kind of changed the game. And despite the fact that he's had some games where he's let in a lot of goals, I think he's been as good as you could possibly imagine him being so far this season, which is crazy that the Canadiens are 1-5, and you can say that he's been incredible through his own 5 starts.
Yeah, I thought, it was really funny before the game. They were pumping the tires at Grice a lot. And I'm not sure if I'm the only one who heard Grice. I thought they were saying Price all the time, and it was kind of throwing me off. But it was like they were pumping the tires on Grice. And partway through the game, you realized no matter how good he is, he's not getting much support. And that's where the goals started piling up. And I think the Canadiens defense, I think even the most ardent of supporters would say there are some question marks, especially on that first pairing. But Allen looks like there was no point. I'll be honest, I never noticed Jake Allen in any of the bad ways you would notice a player. I just noticed him in position, stopping pucks, looking solid. And for the Blues fans I know, I feel like what I've always heard from them is Allen is good till he's not, and then it goes off a cliff. But here's the truth. If he can be consistent, I think this team has a chance if they can improve in front of him, because what he's doing right now feels not so superhuman. It's not sustainable. And if the defense, if we can get some more goals in the net, doesn't have to be this many every time, get a few more goals every game, I think he could pull out some winners for us.
Absolutely.
I thought it was an interesting game, like overall. I didn't want to get this point to get lost because Arun brought it up earlier, but with Detroit, their team with a lot of team speed, they're an exciting team. Like Dylan Larkin, I think he embodies that really well. He's one of the fastest guys in the NHL. But overall, they are a pretty fast team. I think stylistically, it differed a lot from the game against Carolina in terms of Carolina seemed to play with a little bit more control, a little slower, but control breakouts. They could get pretty much the puck out of their zone whenever they wanted. I think what Montreal did particularly well tonight is they exploited that sort of the Detroit's hyper pace. Montreal things at their best when they let really quick, offensively inventive teams fall into their own trap, make mistakes. And that's how I think they changed the tenor of the game tonight. I think, again, like Detroit really wanted to push the pace all night. And Montreal said, if we want to turn this into a track meet, it'll play right into their hand, because I don't think Detroit initially has. I think they are building the skill with some of the younger guys, but they don't necessarily have the marriage of skill and experience to sort of, make Montreal sweat a bit. And I think once Montreal figured that out, that Detroit was a team playing with a lot of speed and talent, but not necessarily with intentionality. That's where the game sort of changed. I saw it last. I mentioned on the last episode I was on with Carolina. They were sort of setting up right below the face-off circle, from the left face-off circle, and just getting everything they wanted laterally in the offensive zone. That wasn't necessarily the case with Detroit. They came in with a lot of pace, but they didn't have set plays they were going to. And again, I think Ben Chiarot gets that goal and the whole game changes from there. But I think exploiting Detroit's speed, which seems like a weird thing to say, but I think that really worked out well for the Canadiens tonight.
It does seem like a weird thing to say, but it is entirely right, because that is the way that the Canadian style works, right? Their main source of offense as a team is a neutral zone counterattack, right? They're very aggressive in the neutral zone, try to break up plays and create rushes going the other way. And ironically, that style got them absolutely murdered in Buffalo, because for whatever reason, they were exceptionally prepared to counteract that style. And it was just like every single time there was one little deke with the stick or one little incisive pass, and there was 2-on-1 after 2-on-1 after 2-on-1 against the Canadiens' aggressive checking style. Detroit wasn't able to execute that, whether they are not as good as Buffalo in terms of talent to execute getting through that system, or whether they're not as well coached as Buffalo is under Granato. I think those are both, question marks, or maybe the Canadiens just executed a lot better tonight. But that is exactly what the Canadiens like to do, is counterattack on teams that actually do possess a little bit of speed and like to attack with pace. And that's kind of what they did against the Toronto Maple Leafs in last year's playoffs. Not to continually bring that up for you, Arun.
No, that is precisely what happened. I think what Montreal did really well in the playoffs is, take teams that sort of rely on their speed and just totally force them to the outside, and just then away they go, and they took the chances well. Whether that was sort of, the roster composition, whether it was Phil Deneau playing, just some incredible defensive hockey, and sort of in the system, and a little bit of luck too, and some good goaltending, sure, but it is what they do well. And again, Detroit, I think they are building the talent up with their younger guys, but they're just not there yet where they can just send rush after rush after rush, as we saw with Carolina the other night, where they had 4 lines that could just control the pace. And even though they didn't have to, they weren't necessarily flying through the offensive zone, but they had intentionality. Teravainen was getting everything he wanted. Sebastian Aho was getting every look he wanted. So different game for sure. I thought, but it was a lot of fun because there was a lot of open ice for both teams to create. And again, it seemed like Detroit had that more side. I thought tonight was gonna be the more Sider hour for the first 15 minutes. And not saying
was
they
great
afterwards. But man, that kid is going to be a star in this league if he continues to put it together.
I think intentionality, which Arun brought up, it's so weird. I feel like I'm talking to myself when I say that out loud. I don't run into a lot of Aruns.
It's just a lot of the self back pat,
all I can say is Arun is right, and I'll be right 2/3 of the time in this conversation. But I think intentionality absolutely is a great way to talk about the difference in this game. And there are 2 moments in the game that 3 moments that illustrate it for me. 2 of them may seem small, but it's when the puck got caught up in the skates of Caulfield and of Suzuki, and they just kept going. They seemed ready. They knew where they wanted to be. They knew where they wanted the puck to be, and they were playing with purpose. The Habs were playing with purpose. And I go back to that power play when Detroit had a chance to cut the lead to 3-2, and it was just passing, and it never felt, as a viewer, as someone who's not #played the game, it never felt like they were ready. It never felt like there was a plan. It felt like they were hoping that they would expose a weakness they had not identified, and that is what made it work for the Habs. They were always in position. Again, these are things I haven't said about this team in like a decade, but they were always in position. It was amazing.
Yeah, sometimes those games just come together, and when things are like when you need a bounce, they finally got a couple of bounces, right? Like I forget which goal it was or whose goal it was. Dvorak's, that's what it was. Where he it was a good play to begin with. It was a good rush, but kind of just like shooting it to the middle and it bounces off a skate and goes in. The Canadiens needed that desperately, right? That third goal to get things going. And then, of course, Perreault chimes in with a natural hat trick on top of one of the best games he's ever had in terms of controlling play. I mean, Perreault has been an underrated player for a long time and now is in like the back couple of years of his career, right? But while he was on the ice tonight, the Canadiens controlled 85% of shot attempts. Yeah, led right. Both teams. Like, absolutely incredible. Expected goals for percentage, 86%. Like, he was amazing. High danger chances, 89% while Perreault was on the ice. He had a phenomenal game. And I know that, like, I think that you always get a little bit divisive in Habs fandom whenever you talk about the whole Francophone side of things and bringing Francophone players into the fold and how much, the coach, the GM has to speak French. But there is something special about a Francophone player or a Quebecois player or any player who is born in Quebec, raised in Quebec, having a fantastic game at the Bell Center. There's something that it adds to the atmosphere that I don't think is quite replicated anywhere else in the league. It just ignites the flames of old. You know what I mean? And I think the Canadiens do need that in some aspect, whether it's, through the draft or adding guys who are, value deals like Perreault. I think that is something that is intrinsically part of the team. And when the team is good, they always have that, right? You have to have somebody who has the magic touch, and it's usually the homeboy.
I think it's also, as I will, being from Toronto, from the GTA originally, I'm not going to pretend to understand what it means for Francophone audiences, fandom, to have a French player there. But what I can say is, from a general BIPOC point of view, and thinking about representation, I think the Canadiens have to be finding ways to have those players and develop that talent, because that is an intrinsic part of the identity, and it means something special that none of us here can fully ever understand, because we're not Quebecers. How could we ever understand this? And I don't always understand the coach needing to be fluent in French part of it, but I understand I understand there's still a lot about that culturally I don't get, but I find a joy in seeing Perreault doing well. Drouin, who is probably my favorite player right now in the league to cheer for. I think there's something incredibly special when you see the energy in the Bell Center. And I still maintain there is no arena where you get energy like the Bell Center. When you feel that energy, when a Francophone player is doing well, it's unlike anything in any sport in North America. I don't think there's any other sport that has the same kind of focused fandom and oversized impact of someone from that market.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about Drouin. Let's key in on Drouin a little bit, because I think this is a guy that if the Canadiens weren't, heading into this game 0-5-0, it would be a bigger story how good Jonathan Drouin has been. Coming back from anxiety, which led to insomnia, that derailed his last season. He took off the last section of the season and the playoffs where they went to the Stanley Cup final. Imagine how tough that decision had to be for Jonathan Drouin to actually prioritize his own health over playing in a Stanley Cup final or in the playoffs where they actually had some hope to do something. The sacrifice that he had to make to better himself and the immediate result on the ice. And you look at how much, despite the fact that they've been terrible this season, you can feel there's a lightness to Jonathan Drouin that hasn't been there for the last several years. And yes, he set up that amazing goal tonight, but you know what the most noticeable play he made tonight for me was in the third period. The Canadiens are kind of executing a bit of a sloppy zone entry, and the puck just comes to Drouin. He's outside the blue line, and instead of taking possession of the puck, he just lightly tapped it over a Red Wings defenseman's stick, over the blue line, over to Josh Anderson, who was able to cut in and take a good shot, which he missed the net because he missed the net a lot this game, and he misses the net a lot overall. But just those little touches that Drouin makes that are smart and incisive, that's when he's at his best. And yes, he's a terrific playmaker when you can get him the puck in good areas, but it's those little plays as well that make him a special player. And I'm glad we're seeing that, because we talked on the very first episode of this show when we had Jack Hahn on, where like Jonathan Drouin needs to have touches. He needs to touch the puck. Doesn't necessarily have to hold on to the puck, but he needs to touch the puck, and the puck has to go where Drouin wants it to go for him to be an effective player. Doesn't necessarily have to be on his stick. He just has to control the play in transition and offensively. And I think he's doing that. And if this team was scoring a bit more overall this season, his point production would be way up as well. He's been the guy who's keyed almost all the offense up until this game. So I'm just so impressed with what he's been able to do amidst all the negativity surrounding the team. I have so much time for Jonathan Drouin right now.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I think your point just sums it up well. Like I think if the Canadiens weren't winless coming into tonight's game, probably would be getting a little more attention. It's sort of the hard storyline to reconcile. Like Jonathan Drouin might be off to his best start of his career after taking, a well-needed, well plotted mental health break, for sure. But yeah, I mean, tonight, I actually didn't notice that play that you were talking about earlier, but good on him for getting the 2 assists. Again, change the tenor of the game you're right. Like, I think I can't say it as well as Jack Hand did, but I mean, when he's afforded time and space to make plays, he can really maybe hit an extra gear. So we'll see. I mean, I'm inclined to say that, we know who Jonathan Drouin is as a player, but if there is an extra gear that he can unlock, if he consistently is this playmaker, I'm intrigued. And he definitely has had a hell of a start to the season. So good to see it in a win tonight. I'll say that for him for sure.
And Mr. Singh, I will say, I know that you wanted to talk about Drouin as well for personal reasons. So let's jump into it.
Yeah, it's because I have a Funko of him. No, that's not the only reason. I have to say, when I bought this Funko, when he started going into a funk, I guess pun intended, I was like, that was an odd choice, but I got so emotional when he scored his first goal, the first goal of the Habs season this year. So a lot of people know this because I talk about it online. I talk about it in various different forums that I've had. I just turned 40 and I've had severe sleep apnea for the last 25 years. So I wake up about 20 to 40 times an hour. That will never get better. That will never change. This does not woes me, but it is to say, it's not a thing we hear people talk about a lot. We often talk about lack of sleep like a badge of pride, and the people who can function on just 4 hours of sleep. And I'm very happy for the people who have that ability, if you want to call it strength, who are neurotypical, who don't deal with some of the issues that Drouin's been dealing with. But as someone who's dealt with anxiety for that same period of time, I don't know which came first, the anxiety or sleep issues, who has sleep apnea, has had multiple surgeries and treatment to deal with it. It is an incredibly difficult thing, and and when you have sleep issues like that, it is not like you can just go stay in bed for 12 hours on the weekend and catch up on your sleep. Your sleep goes off a cliff. You're not getting that back, and it's an incredibly difficult thing. So for Drouin to not only just get out of bed and get to the gym every day, but to perform as an elite athlete and be as good as he is, with everyone looking at him and knowing what he's dealing with, takes incredible strength and incredible courage. And I am in awe, and it's something that when I first developed the sleep apnea when I was 15, if I had seen a hockey player who was talking about this so openly and succeeding, he would have been an inspiration for me, and I actually think would have helped me in life at an earlier age figure out how to straighten my life up a bit. Because when you hit that sleep slide, it's like hitting black ice. You kind of just got to turn into that spin and try to straighten yourself out. So it's incredibly amazing to me. And I think what makes Drouin so important off the ice will be how he inspires, how he already has and will continue to inspire certain conversations and discussion. And I'm really looking forward to, hopefully a long time from now in his post-career efforts, what he could do to help with the mental health and other kind of emotional health discussions that I think need to be had in our society. But I also would imagine for the people on this team, he will be an invaluable source of inspiration as someone who came in with hype, had to take his time and came back and did it even better than when and came back even better when he left. And I just couldn't be more excited, man. It means so much to me to see someone like him succeeding. And there's no market where it's harder, and there's no market where it's better when you're good.
Yeah, that's an important thing to say. Like, as much as it is harder in Montreal because like the lens of criticism is so focused, but when it's going well, I mean, just ask Mike Camilleri when he scored that hat-trick goal in the Centennial Classic, right? And you could see him on the bench and the crowd noise. He was just sat there saying, "Wow, wow."
I was at that
it.
game. I was at that game.
You told me before. I hate you for it.
I can't. No, it was. Let's just say the funniest thing was in the pregame game where the old timers were clearly couldn't get the helmet over his head. But because
there's a thing that happens to us all as men as we get older. It's called the widening, and our faces just get a little wider.
It was absolutely amazing, and then Viggo Mortensen there to introduce things, just amazing. But my voice was gone from cheering, and I thought I was imagining that the building looked like it was shaking, and maybe it was a trick of the mind. But when I still go back and watch that play, and I watch how those cameras are shaking. Other than taking my wife to her first Habs game, which will always be special, I can't imagine a more meaningful Habs game in my lifetime short of a Stanley Cup win. That was, and against the Bruins, that was incredible. And I'm just gonna say, I miss Camilleri. I miss the excitement. I don't know if Suzuki or Caulfield turned into that kind of exciting player, but man, when Camilleri used to take a shot and get down on one knee, you just knew something fun was going to happen. It was going to be a beauty.
Yeah, he had a nice short career with the Montreal Canadiens that I think people kind of gloss over now. You don't hear many people talk about Mike Camilleri, but he was awesome. But yeah, speaking of Jonathan Drouin, we should also mention, like, this is a guy that the first thing that he did when he came to Montreal, when he signed a big contract, was to set up a fund to help fund, I believe, the Children's Hospital in the French super hospital downtown, the MUHC. Or no, the MUHC is... It's either the MUHC or the CHUM. CHUM is the French one. Because, it's the English super hospital and the French super hospital. They just, like, flip the acronyms, so you have to remember which one's which. But either way, this is a guy who like, the first thing he did before he ever touched a puck was he set up a fund to help fund people who are sick. And, like, that's who Jonathan Drouin is. And I just couldn't be happier for his success. And I hope it continues. I hope that he leads the Canadiens in scoring this season and has the best year of his career. We've had a few people mention in the chat that the Maple Leafs are only 3 points ahead of the Montreal Canadiens now in the standings. I think it behooves us to point out that the only reason that the Maple Leafs are ahead of the Canadiens in the standings was they scored one more goal in the season opener against the Montreal Canadiens. So one goal could have had the Leafs essentially in last place so far this season. And I don't want to talk too much about the Maple Leafs because I know Canadiens fans want to hear about the Canadiens, but I feel like making fun of the Maple Leafs is also something that Canadiens fans want to do. So I think we got to do that a little bit after they lost 7-1 against the Pittsburgh Penguins with no Sidney Crosby, no Evgeny Malkin, no Tristan Jarry, no Jeff Carter. Ew,
and no Chris Letang, right? Wasn't he ruled out today as well?
Yeah, no Chris Letang either. Wow, like
I'll say quickly, guys. It was so nice to see like Arun just talk about fond memories of Mike Camilleri when in Toronto it's just nothing but contempt and bile towards even our fond memories of the team are just like tainted or it's not a good time in Maple Leafs land. I mean, I think you try, obviously, when you cover the sport, obviously you sometimes have to lend yourself to calmer line of thinking, and maybe go for a lap. But I don't know. I mean, I think the contempt and the scorn is well deserved. I mean, I've seen parallels to, at least on Twitter, I was seeing like a few people were trying to note the parallels between Mike Babcock getting fired and this. So I'm not necessarily trying to go down the line of reactionary thinking where it's like, we need a scapegoat for this. But yeah, it's not a good time to be a Maple Leafs fan. I think there is a large segment of the fan base that still hasn't even came back to the team yet, or it's game 6 of 82, so I'm not all the way back. Or, this is just sort of maybe a long way of saying like win around first for a lot of fans. But to lose 7-1 on a night where Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin's not in the lineup, then Chris Letang got ruled out today in the COVID protocol. I mean, these sort of losses in prime time, maybe it's, this is sort of a confirmation bias of sorts, but it does seem that for better or for worse, and from my perspective, oftentimes for worse, the Maple Leafs find a way to embarrass themselves when the spotlight's on them. A Hockey Night in Canada game against Pittsburgh where none of their marquee stars are on the lineup, and it's like, not to compare it to the David Ayers game, but it's like in the same sort of tier of, here's a chance to make up some ground. Local media is sort of running out of patience with the team. National media is having just a fantastic time, getting laughs off as they should. I mean, look, try to put it in perspective, it's 6 games, but a 7-1 loss. I don't know. I don't think there is an obvious, clear answer. It'd be so easy if there was trade this guy, or this coach needs to go. But I said at the time when Sheldon Keefe was appointed as head coach, it's like that's sort of the last card that Kyle Dubas can play, short of trading one of his big 4 players, which he's vowed twice on record, not during some just game 41 press conference, like in the State of the Union type press conference, like I'm not trading these guys. So yeah, they're sort of boxed in creatively to a solution here. Again, 76 games to go with a team that on paper is quite good, but they play worse than some of the parts all the time, and a 7-1 loss is hilarious. Sometimes, listen, we spoke about the positive, I don't want to trivialize like mental health, especially as someone with 2 anxiety disorders, and we just spoke about that, but not trivialize it, but I have to get this joke off. Sometimes negativity works, guys. Sometimes negativity works.
Sometimes you got to bully a little bit.
So I don't know. That's my long rant on the state of the Maple Leafs. It's a lot of fun to watch the Canadiens tonight,
First time, because they haven't been fun so far. Both these teams, like, frankly, as much as the vibe right now around the Canadiens is positive for tonight. And I saw somebody in the chat saying like, "Oh, Canadiens fans think they're going to win the Stanley Cup because they won one time." Don't get it twisted. I don't think anybody's coming out of this game thinking that the Canadiens are in a good spot. They're still at like a 5% chance to make the playoffs this year. Nobody's happy, but the difference is the Canadiens don't really have expectations because of the losses that they suffered in the offseason. They had their miracle run. Most people understood that it wasn't a situation that was going to repeat this year. So like the focus at the beginning of the season was long shot to make the playoffs. Now it's the longer shot. So like as much as it's disappointing to start 0-5, what has happened hasn't knocked them down off of what the expectations were too much. Whereas the Maple Leafs are like, okay, cup contender. They're starting just as terrible as the Habs have pretty much, but they look much better on paper and the expectations are so much higher. So obviously, Leafs Twitter is losing their minds.
If I may say quickly, Mitch Marner just said it's not time to be concerned. It's like, well.
I mean, for him, it is. It 100% is. I mean, and the thing is, Mitch Marner, his underlying numbers so far this season are good. Like, he should have more production than he has had. And I don't think we can write off the fact that he started the season with an injury, right? He got hurt in training camp. Wayne Simmons clipped him a little bit in practice. Austin Matthews coming off wrist surgery. So there are legitimate reasons to like give them a break. But at the same time, like you mentioned, Arun, like they haven't met a situation that was hilarious. They couldn't turn into a loss. You just look at last year alone. right? They had the whole Vancouver situation coming out of COVID, where like the Canucks couldn't even skate. They were so tired. They were bagged from so many other players having COVID and just coming out of the recovery, having such a long layoff, and the Leafs like absolutely bottled that game. And there's the playoffs. Like, it was, you watch that All or Nothing series, and almost every single episode ends with like this super embarrassing collapse. And you're like, when you edit it this way, you can kind of see where it's going, even if you didn't watch the playoffs, right? And the Leafs are that team that find a way to do the most painful thing to their fans repeatedly. But they should be better based on how they've played. The results should be better. But how long can you tell a fan base that things should be better when they've only experienced disappointment and now their best players aren't performing? So it's a very tough situation for them. But I suppose we shouldn't talk about the Leafs too much more, even though I find them so easy to talk about because they're so chaotic, right? The Habs are chaotic in a different way. I think the Habs are more frustrating. Like, we talked about Drouin earlier, and one of the things that was frustrating me so much as a viewer this season was, you know, Drouin had that great start, right? Scored the first goal of the season against the Maple Leafs, and then it was just like, and nothing. The Canadiens got no jump out of it. And like I've mentioned before on the show, like if that was me, not that I am in any way talented enough to like sniff a locker room in a professional hockey setting, I would be plowing through the boards. I'd be so excited for Jonathan Drouin, right? Like the next shift, you're going out, you're laying big hits, you're driving the net, you're doing everything you possibly can to cash in on that momentum, and they hadn't been able to in any game up to now. And finally, they were able to get some of that mojo back. So I think that more than anything is probably why Canadiens fans right now are a little bit full of hope, is that that ability to layer a few shifts together hasn't been there at all this season. And now it finally showed up and they got some goals for it. So it's like, it's breaking the slump, yes, but it's also the way they showed that they could do it, I think, that is kind of turning people into like, okay, maybe this team isn't straight dog trash.
I think also, look, I want to talk about the Leafs first real quickly to say, like, I take no joy in what they're going through. And I'll be honest, I think we've either or known people who've had this in your careers where you're just snake bitten and you're doing everything you can, but there's like emotional quicksand or whatever, professional quicksand. And no matter how hard you try, you just keep sinking faster and you're trying to correct and you're overcorrecting or undercorrecting, you're overcorrect. And sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is be extricated from that environment. And I would argue that the Leafs have an incredible group of players who maybe not be an incredible team of players.
Yeah, I can see that.
That sounds, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it's like it's not that Mitch Marner isn't worth a bunch of money. It's not that Austin Matthews isn't elite. It's just that perhaps what you need to move someone because, you know, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 is still equaling 2 somehow. It's just not working. And that's really when I look at that team, that's kind of what it feels like. And I'll take it back to something else Canadiens related. Looking back over here, which is you know, whatever. I was a big Subban fan, remained a big Subban fan, but this, from the sounds of it, now how good a player he wasn't right for that locker room. And we can, as Andrew has talked about a number of times, he's debated a number of times, you know, maybe for some of the reasons for it, but ultimately he wasn't right for that room and he had to be moved based on the way the organization was going. And that may be the case if there are some players who just need to not be there in Toronto. What I get excited about in Montreal this year is I want to see those young players develop. I want to see if they can make those young players work, because that's the one thing I haven't seen in the Bergevin era is Bergevin acquired young players grow and blossom.
And that fits perfectly with, we've got a few comments asking us to talk about Cole Caulfield and his slow start. I thought he had a really good game overall tonight. He's still like, I think one of the things that's going to hold Caulfield back until he develops it a little bit more is his strength, like on the puck. He gets knocked off the puck really easily. He's not a very good forechecker. I think that a lot of people see a small guy like Caulfield and they kind of expect him to play like Brendan Gallagher. He's not Brendan Gallagher. Like, he's not going to be that style of player. He's going to be more of a shifty deke guy trying to beat guys one-on-one. He's not going to battle it out along the boards as much and battle it out in front of the net. But I think he's getting close to breaking out here. If he just gets a goal off of somebody's butt, I think it's going to be like lighting a fire under him, and we're going to see it. Like, some of the confident plays are starting to happen. He's still bobbling the puck a little bit, but I don't think that there's much of an issue there. He's, I think, now playing on the third line. His center is Jake Evans. So, like, I like Jake Evans. I have a lot of time for Jake Evans. Don't think he's a third line center. Don't think he's going to create much offense for Caulfield to bank on or to bounce off of, and it's just not a good fit. I think they desperately need to add a third line center if they want to be competitive. But I'm not too worried about Cole Caulfield. I think there are spots in his game that will be frustrating for a couple of years, but he's going to score goals. I think that if he doesn't develop into a 30-goal scorer, it is the ultimate destruction of Bergevin's whole "I'm going to build through the draft" ideology that he's parroted out there a few times over the course of his career. But we're going to wrap up quickly here because it's Saturday night and we don't want to stay too long, but we've got some other questions from the Discord that we'll throw out here rapid fire. Phantom asks, do you think this turnaround will help spark the kids on the team as a whole going into the Western road trip? We've had issues with the California streaks before and need to come out of this trip on the winning side. I don't think the California road trips are the same as they used to be. The Sharks have had a hot start to the season, but I don't think any of those California teams are particularly great. The Canadiens aren't either, so it doesn't really matter. But I don't know. I think that the young players haven't really hit it off yet, right? Like, this game was not the young players who carried the day. It wasn't Suzuki. It wasn't Caulfield. They had all right games, but it was more of the vets that broke out. So I think we still need to see the young players take over.
Yeah, this absolutely feels like a team that is Weber and Price's team. They're just not here. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to when it's Caulfield and Suzuki's team. And I think Suzuki is a guy I'm watching intently because I can't help but do that because I know what his price tag is going to be for the team in the future. Smart, shrewd move in my mind. It's a worthwhile gamble, but it's the kind of thing I wish they'd done with Subban, not to bring him up again. But it is also I give him a minute. Same thing I would tell Leafs fans. Like, honestly, I know Marner may not be the messenger for this, but my note to everybody would be just chill out. And either way, the sample size is still too small for us to know. We're still living in COVID era. People are getting used to getting back to some measure of regularity or familiarity in life. Give it a minute and let's see where this is in a month, because if the Habs were 5-0, I would not be saying Stanley Cup, because I wouldn't be believing it. So if they were, when they were 0-5, I was like, okay, they're not that bad either. I do not believe the Leafs or Canadiens or most teams have shown who they are yet. We're just starting the season. Everyone can chill out a bit.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you quickly that Caulfield and Suzuki are going to be fine and could have a great stretch in the California road trip. I wouldn't say the two situations are comparable, and I'm saying this in Montreal's favor. Like, Caulfield and Suzuki still have years to figure out who they are, whereas the Maple Leafs are entering year 6 with their core 4. So I think there's a little bit of a difference there in the impatience. But yeah, this being a Canadian show. I think Cole Caulfield's going to be fine. I said in the chat with you guys, like, he's too talented not to. Yep. It would be an indictment of the organization if he doesn't become that guy for the Habs, and I think he will. And it's early in the season. His skill profile is too good not to. And yeah, there's a nice little stretch coming up, so I think he could go off. He's due for it, and I think so is Suzuki as well.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest issue so far for the Canadian season is, like, if you look at the schedule of October, like, this was a month that they probably should have made bank on, right? A lot of non-playoff teams that they were facing, they didn't really get much accomplished. So that's, like, part of why it's such an uphill battle for them going forward. But at the very least, I hope they can entertain us. Like, one of the questions from the Discord was, like, how does it feel to finally do an episode after a win? It's good because we're not being repetitive, Like, I think after a certain number of losses that they all are patterned very similarly, you get into a danger of talking about the same thing on the show every single time. Like, I even had people saying, like, in the chat, they're like, oh, you mentioned this last 2 shows. Like, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to. But when you see something happening over and over again, you kind of have to go back to it a little bit and at least touch on it. Now we could talk about something else, something positive. You know, Mike Hoffman got his first. Perreault, what a fantastic performance. Dvorak getting his first on a nice play that they got lucky on. They also asked, Cold Snacks asked, has the curse shire been broken? My friend, it was never the curse shire. It's the SDPN curse. And as soon as Adam Wilde started calling it the curse shire, he transferred the curse to the Toronto Maple Leafs, because this is how SDPN works. As soon as one person teases another person, they absorb the curse. That's how it works. Now, I don't have a rooting interest anymore. I used to be a gigantic Habs fan, so I haven't really been affected by these losses. It doesn't really bother me. I've still been having a lot of fun on the show, talking to amazing people like Arun, and no matter how this season goes, we're going to have a kick-ass time on this show. We're going to have fun after every show. It's going to be cathartic after losses. It's going to be fun after wins, and I'm excited for you guys to bring it in here and have fun with us. Make sure you like the video on YouTube. Make sure you just subscribe everywhere you can find a podcast. We're finally on Google. And to Arun and Arun, can you both tell us, we'll start with Arun with no E. Tell us what you got going on. I know you already did last episode, but tell us again. And then Arun Singh, tell us as well.
And so you can, I guess I'll be freelancing in a few different places, but I can say this now. I'll be writing a little bit at Yahoo Sports Canada again, among other places. So I have a few different freelance projects in the work. You can find me on Twitter at Arun Things. It's ARUN Things. Yeah, it should be a fun season ahead. Thank you again for having me, not only today, but on Thursday, and for indulging me to talk about the Maple Leafs, and what an interesting time just to be in that fan base as well, even though this is a Canadian show. So
it's my pleasure, and also make sure you mention your book as well, because I think that's going to be really important when it comes out.
Yeah,
I know it's not close to done yet, but still.
So I'm working on a book about the history of racism in hockey. It's still a while away from being published, but yeah, I'm enjoying the research process, and yeah, that's the main project I'm working on at the moment.
Before you go, Arun, we got a comment on the YouTube channel that says, incredible show today. Can't exactly put my finger on it, from a person named Arun.
Oh, here we go.
Yes, finally, the
Arun power.
Yeah, you know what? We can. I definitely. We should get rid of Andrew, get the other Arun on here, and take over.
You up for it, Arun?
I'm for it.
We should just answer in unison, Arun. So I will say that, first of all, to just go back to the curse part, it remains the Dangle curse. Steve Dangle got behind the Habs by getting behind, gave over Montreal. The power to destroy lives, is his. Steve Dangle is ruining our lives. You can find me on Twitter at Arun, ARUNE, and then on Instagram at Arun Singh, ARUNE. And if you don't know how to spell Singh, I don't know what to say. But I'm the director of brand for editorial at Skybound Entertainment, home of Walking Dead and Invincible. So buy some Walking Dead. Buy some Invincible. Buy a really awesome comic called Excellence. Also, if you want to buy some books I've written a few. They're collected in WWE, Then, Now, and Forever, a graphic novel available at your local Indigo, probably, or at any other book. And you can follow me if you want to hear more about Cats, Fast and Furious, The Vampire Diaries, or General Hospital, I guess, and hockey too.
Awesome. All right, and I should say for my friend Arun Singh, being a huge comics guy, I wore this shirt for the show. It's a Lion King Black Panther crossover, and it's my favorite shirt in the world. So, all right, everybody, thanks for showing up, and thanks for coming on the show. We're gonna be right back next week when the Habs take on, I believe next week is all late games, so stick around for like 1 a.m. when I stream this.